Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. It's an exciting show today. We've got a lot to cover. We got some weather coming through here that might interfere with the show, but we'll see what happens. Unlike Mark Levin, I don't have an underground bunker, so if the sirens go off, I'm leaving. So just so you know. Also, if you're in the Central Illinois area, keep your eyes on the lookout for potential storms. They're predicting that there could be some tornadoes with 130-mile-an-hour winds and hail up to 3 inches. So it could be a nasty one in your area. So pay attention to the weather. Also, make sure that you follow us on X or Facebook. We're also on YouTube and Rumble. All you need to do is do a search for the DPB show, and you'll be able to find us on those platforms. So thanks for everyone showing up. I want to start off with a little bit of sad news. Last week, one of the few conservative actors in Hollywood, Chuck Norris, passed away. And so in honor of his passing, I have a little video of him and him describing how he, like Ronald Reagan, decided that he needed to leave the Democrat Party because it wasn't really a home to him anymore. And what's amazing is that's before the Democrat Party couldn't figure out the difference between a man and a woman. So we'll have to see how that works out. Let me share my screen here. We'll see. Go down here and show our Chuck Norris. There's not that many conservatives in Hollywood, so you really have to enjoy the ones that we do have. Maybe next time I'll have a little less to show here. Here he is.
Well, I used to be a Democrat, but unfortunately, the Democrats went too far to the left, and the Republicans moved into their position that the Democrats were 40 years ago. See, and so what the Democrats believed 40 years ago, the Republicans believe today. And so I realized that I had to go to a Republican because the Democrats just got too far off the trail. They just got completely off the trail and lost all reality of what America stood for. And so I realized that Republicans at this point in time are more focused on what is best for America than what the Democrats are. Wow.
All right, sorry about that. I made a bit of a mistake there in terms of closing a little more than I intended to. So the next thing I want to show is, every day is a good day to show an A-10 and what it can do, because that's really the solution to opening up the Strait of Hormuz. That, along with the Apache helicopters. And so I'll pull that up for you. This time I've actually got sound. So for those of you who are listening, I think it's gonna be a better experience than the last time. Some of these things I'm learning that they don't actually have the sound with them, and when you're listening at home, that's not exactly as much fun. Well, apparently I buried that one deep in my timeline. I'm having a little bit of a trouble finding it. So let's move on to probably more interesting topics. We'll talk a little bit about one of the things that, as the Republican Party, what we need to do is be able to get our base more enthused. And as David has pointed out multiple times, there's over 2.5 million people who are registered gun owners. And so it's important for us to really hammer home the point about how J.B. Pritzker really hates to have gun owners in the state. And he'll do just about anything to stop you from owning a gun, whether it's violates the Constitution or not. So here's the law that he's trying to get passed, and it's called HB 4414. And what that law does is it requires that the ammunition that you use all be serialized. So in other words, each bullet that you use will have its own unique ID number. Now, obviously, that causes the manufacturing cost to increase. And since Illinois is the only one who's really doing that, that makes it even more expensive for the manufacturers to make those guns for you. And it also begs the question of people who make their own ammunition as to how they'll comply with this law. In addition, it creates a way to track you and see how much ammo you're buying by creating a state ammo registry. And so obviously, we don't want to be tracked by the government any more than absolutely necessary. And then, of course, no good law goes through the Democrat process without having there be a tax to it. So they've added a 5-cent per round fee to that purchase for you. So of course there's another higher price. And then they've added more criminal penalties, fines, and charges for non-serialized ammo to make sure that you're forced on it. So that is impactful and makes legal, lawful gun owners now criminals. So all these things are negative things that if you're a gun owner, you definitely want to be voting against JB, and we need to make sure that we're letting our friends who are gun owners know where this legislation is going and how JB is promoting this type of legislation. What's also interesting is that under the category of JB doesn't like you and doesn't care about you, we have last week we talked a bit about the commercial driver's license and how those are impacting states. And one of the better reporters out there, Julie Kelly, has a good piece on how many about how many drivers in Illinois there appears to be. So as you can see from the screen here, the Department of Transportation, it appears that the Illinois Secretary of State has denied the Department of Transportation's finding that at least 20% of all non-domiciled commercial driver's license issued by the Secretary of State were unlawful. So that's roughly 300,000 That's roughly 300,000 drivers that shouldn't be driving that are on the road. In addition, because of the failure of Pritzker to comply with this law, we're losing $128 million of federal funding. So it's, well, I'm sorry, it was 11,000 extra non-domiciled commercial driver's license in the recent year 23 and 24. And it's $128 million of federal funding that Pritzker has lost the state by failing to comply with these regulations. And then in addition, we've got, and under the category of Pritzker doesn't care about you, we have his commentary about what happened to the Loyola student. And of course, whenever he gets himself into trouble, what he likes to do is blame Trump, even though it's his fault.
There have been real failures. Those failures, of course, extend beyond the borders of Illinois. They're national failures, a failure to have comprehensive immigration reform, a failure of the president to follow his own edict to go after the worst of the worst. There have been real failures. Those failures have...
So his failure to go after the worst of the worst in terms of Pritzker's help in this is Pritzker has banned ICE from the city and doesn't have, as Illinois is a sanctuary state, it refuses to cooperate with ICE to get those bad guys out of the state. So how can he not be blamed for that particular issue? So in addition to that, what we've got is we've got the Democrats are continuing on with their chaos theory. And so what is Trump's solution to that? So we've had a number of different solutions that Trump has implemented. So right away, he sent ICE there. Second of all, we've got Elon Musk is offering to pay for all those particular pay the TSA agents who are not getting paid right now. And in addition, the latest is Trump wants to send the National Guard. Now, of course, the minute that he tries any of these things, the Democrat Party is going to sue and try and keep him from getting these things opened. So here's
to airports across the country. And President Trump just making some news right now on Truth Social, saying he might actually now send in the National Guard to airports across the country to help. This is the Truth Social here. He writes, blame the Democrats for the airport's mess. They want our country to do so badly. They want our country to fail. They broke the already signed bill because they want to take care of criminals who enter our country illegally rather than American citizens. And then he goes on to say, I may call up the National Guard for more help. Thank you to our great ICE patriots for helping. It makes a big difference. And President Trump.
So in addition to it's really interesting to see which airports are having problems and which ones aren't. So it seems to switch depending on the day. So at one point, I've traveled through Houston a couple of times, and for those of you who don't know, Houston has multiple airports. They have an airport called Hobie, and then they have another one that's named after Bush International. And depending on the day, different ones will have longer lines than the others. So for instance, when I was traveling in October and they closed it down, the Bush airport had 3-hour lines, when I showed up at Hobie, there was no line at all. I got right through. So it makes me wonder whether there's some coordination with the unions to make it worse than it needs to be. So for instance, the stat is that roughly 12% of all the TSA agents are out. But when you look at certain airports, for instance, New Orleans, the outage was 40%. So why is there such discrepancy between the different airports? It makes me wonder whether it's intentional, especially since there's coordination. They're all part of a union, and we saw last week the union representative talking about how that was an issue as well. So makes me wonder whether there's some coordination to try and make this as negative as possible. Yeah, so I mean, we're seeing that too. That was one that was really horrible earlier in the week. Was Pam is mentioning that she's just been through Atlanta airport and had no problems. Where earlier in the week, that was where CNN was camped out to show how long the lines were. So it's really interesting how quickly those problems show up and go away. The next step that they're trying to do in regards to this chaos situation is that they'd like to shut down the airports completely. And so they're claiming that, well, we don't have anybody to man the security, so the airports have to shut down completely. There'll be no flights, period. Be interesting to see how that goes. Meanwhile, in Washington, they're on their way to their 2-week vacation and just leaving this to fester for the next 2 weeks. So apparently we won't have any resolution to this at all. Next thing I want to talk about is what's going on at U of I. We see at U of I, we talked about this earlier in the year, where roughly 6,000 of the students are Chinese members. And the reason that that's important is that before a student can come to the United States to go to school, they have to check in with their Communist Party leaders and sign paperwork that they will spy on the United States. So you think that's really bad, but something has come to light that's even worse than that, is that one of the professors there is from Iran, and she's a daughter of one of the mullahs and niece of one of the former heads. He's now been killed. And what's even worse is that her specific area of expertise is, believe it or not, nuclear energy. And so she's a professor in the nuclear program at U of I, and in addition is going around the country and evaluating the various nuclear power plants that we have. If that's not a security risk, I don't know what is. My son minored in nuclear engineering, and he had to get a security clearance just to take classes. So it makes me wonder how failed is this, that we can't even keep people like that from participating in our education system and taking our technology and be able to use it in other places. When you look at China and their education system over there, only 6% of the population actually goes to college. So that's why it's so important for them to come to the United States and get as much of our knowledge as they possibly can, so that they can bring it back home and use it in their industries to compete with ours. And especially on the military side of things, we absolutely don't want them to do that. Today, also, the FCC has made some rulings to try and keep some of the routers that are coming from China out of our systems so that they can't backdoor take down our internet system. So there's a lot going on with China. I think that people underestimate what China's efforts are in the United States. There's one person that hasn't underestimated that risk, and that is one Donald Trump. So when you look at what he's done to combat China taking over this hemisphere, he started with the Panama Canal, which in one of the biggest blunders in probably the history of the United States, Jimmy Carter sold the Panama Canal for $1 to the Panamanians, and because the Panamanians needed money and China is trying to bribe countries through their Belt and Road program, they were actually able to have significant influence over the Panama Canal. And of course, why that's important is that's the only way. Well, it's not the only way, but it's the shortest, fastest way for the U.S. military to get the ships from one ocean to the other ocean, and so that we can defend ourselves from things like what's going on in Iran and et cetera. Another area where China was getting involved was Venezuela. And so, of course, China has a problem. They don't really have a lot of oil. So, of course, Venezuela is an attractive country for them to try and cozy up to and get their oil. And so Donald Trump took care of that, got rid of their leader there, and things seem to be going more in our favor. That's something that in the future will definitely benefit from. The U.S. oil companies are the number one leaders in technology, and when they were thrown out, those oil fields were not taken care of in the manner that they should have, and production from Venezuela has dropped significantly. Now that the U.S. is back in there, has more capabilities, we should see a boost in production there as well. And now the next area that he's concentrating on is Iran, obviously. So Iran is important because everybody knows about the Strait of Hormuz, and the whole 20% of the world's oil supply goes through there. That's another area where China was getting a lot of their oil. And then because of the sanctions on Iran, they were able to get them for a significant discount to the market rate. So of course they love that. So with the U.S. getting involved there, we'll see how that turns out. I think that we're in good shape to settle the Strait of Hormuz in not too distant future. My favorite plane, the A-10s over there, there's 100 of those. Those are very capable of shooting down any drones that they shoot towards the ships. Also, any of the fast boats that they talk about are also things that could easily be taken care of by those planes as well. In addition, the Apache helicopter is well suited for also defending ships in the Gulf and in the Strait of Hormuz. There's roughly 824 of those Apache helicopters over there. They're also well armed to be able to destroy the fast boats and shoot down drones as well. So I think we're well taken care of in that manner, and that it's only a matter of time before we're able to open the Gulf as well. In addition to the U.S., the Gulf states also have about 124 Apache helicopters that are already shooting down some of the Iranian drones in their own countries. So that part is taken care of. And as the doomsayers like to talk about, is how narrow the Strait of Hormuz is. Narrowest point's only 20 miles across. Well, with that many planes and helicopters, we can easily defend that portion of the Strait of Hormuz. And what's made that possible is the heavy bombing of the anti-aircraft equipment throughout Iran, and now we have air supremacy, not just air superiority, air supremacy. So the slow, an appropriate role in combating Iran's menace over there. Last Tuesday, we had a listener post about their military duty, and they had mentioned that they were a chief in a Black Hawk helicopter. I want to point out that that's a pretty badass place to be. They're the guy that's in charge of making sure that the entire helicopter runs appropriately. But even more impressive is that when they do fly into combat, they're the guy hanging out the door with the machine gun and blasting away at everybody. So I really want to thank Chad Burke for his service to the country, because that's pretty impressive. And in Vietnam, that was the most dangerous position in the helicopter to be in. Obviously, when you're shooting a machine gun, you become the target for all the enemy on the ground. So kudos to him as well. You see David is on his way to well, actually, I'm not sure where David's on his way, but he's there in his car. He's been tooling around, listening to the show, talking. He's got his Cub hat on in anticipation of the opener today. I don't know. I haven't seen any scores yet. I assume he said it was a home opener, so usually Wrigley Field has a day home opener, so we'll see what happens there. One of the things I wanted to point out too is
can you hear me, Chris?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. I've had some technical difficulties, so I apologize. It's been good catching the show and everything, but sorry about that. Yes, I'm on my way back from watching my granddaughter over in Champaign. I should be at the Hesed House shortly, but I had a question, Chris, earlier,
Sure.
and I could have put it in the comments, but I don't recommend that anybody drive their car and start commenting on the DPB show. I want to make sure that I'm clear on that public service announcement. But Chuck Norris, you led the show off with Chuck Norris, and I had a question about Chuck. He was 86 years of age. Is that what he was when he passed away?
Yeah, he was 86. I mean, he stayed in great shape. I mean, he was always pumping all kinds of health products and exercise equipment and things like that.
Well, he looked healthy. I mean, I don't know what ended up taking his life. Obviously, I haven't heard anything about that, but man, he still looked really fit and good at 86 years of age. I'd take that contract if I could get it. 86, that'd give me another 24 years of the DPB show.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think I could be doing the show at 86 years of age, Chris?
I think you might
be doing the show in our ages.
I think so. I mean, it's all a matter of keeping your mind sharp. So, the one way that
you're doing a great job.
The one way that I'm trying to keep my mind sharp these days is through music. So, I'm trying to get better at playing guitar, and my wife's taking drum lessons, and so when she gets a little better, I think we're gonna try and play together, see how that works out. It should be fun. One of the
You're probably aware of this factoid. You're probably aware of this factoid. I went to a Kinder Music program fundraiser, and they talked about what music does for the heart. It's amazing how many electronic little things are leading from the heart to the brain. And when we hear music, they were giving an example of a woman in a nursing home, and she was nonverbal, Alzheimer's. She had very little movement, but when they came in and they would visit her and play the music, she would start tapping her foot and actually mouthing the words. Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah, it really is good for, they try and do a lot of those assisted living and senior facilities. They generally have a music program and have people come in and, because it's really important for them to stay active in terms of those types of things. Yeah, it really is amazing how many, because you also have, when you're playing an instrument, it's even more so because you have to, it's physical as well as mental and spiritual. So you've got all those things combined, working together.
Well, I didn't mean to come in here and just throw up all over your show or anything. But,
well, every now and then I was hearing you in the background, so I wasn't.
Chris, because I did have another question about JB.
Okay, let's go with that then.
All right, I had a question about JB in the registration. You had asked the audience. So if I'm making my own ammo at home, or how about this, Chris? I decide to go to Minnesota, where they don't even require that you present an ID or any type of firearms identification. And my wife and I bought 1,000 rounds. If suddenly Illinois starts being so strict on mandating and taxing and registering ammunition, well, why would anyone buy their ammunition in Illinois? Why wouldn't they just go across the state lines and avoid the craziness of JB Pritzker?
Because they're going to make it illegal to do that. They're going to make it illegal to possess those
so if I'm in possession of ammunition that doesn't have a branded mark, this is really kind of sounding like Nazi Germany.
Well, 100%. I'm not a lawyer, and we
don't have Kenneth on today.
Yeah, we sometimes get Kenneth. Lawyers always like to talk about their specialties as well, so they don't like to just talk about any law topic. They all want to be specialized. So, but yeah, with a little research and reading on that, I think that, quite frankly, that whole law just stinks to high heaven. I just can't fathom. There's so many problems with it, but the problems are intentional because they want to make everybody who owns a gun a criminal. They want to make it so difficult to own a gun and so expensive that people don't own guns. But the problem with that is that the only people that will own the guns are criminals, because they don't care about registering that.
They won't have legal guns.
They're not going to register their bullets. They're not going to get their bullets, from some store in Illinois. They're not going to. That's the thing that you have to respect about the Democrat Party is that when they want to attack something, they use the all hands on deck approach to getting it out of there. So So it's all hands. So, you know, they attacked the ammunition, they attacked the gun, they attacked the gun manufacturer, they attacked, you know, everything involved with the whole process up and down the whole line. And then when they're forced to, because it's unconstitutional and it violates the Second Amendment, then they just slow walk. So these guys, they go all in on this stuff. And, you know, meanwhile, we have Republicans in the Senate still trying to figure out a way to get the SAVE Act through. And you know, taking a two-week hiatus to go vacation, you know, somewhere warm or whatever. And meanwhile, they avoid the lines at the airport because they get special treatment. I did see where Delta Airlines has decided that they will no longer allow Congress people, or not Congress, Congress people to get special treatment and get around the security lines.
The TSA lines,
TSA
advanced
lines.
boarding or something like that.
Yeah. So they're stuck going through the same lines as everybody else. And
so obviously I don't, and I just want to make sure that I'm clear on this. So how will they go back, JB, for those that, you know, obviously 1,000 rounds wasn't a lot of ammunition to have, and you can go through, you know, 1,000 rounds pretty quick. We do. I mean, we go through 1,000 rounds if we go to the gun range and shoot.
Mhm.
But how about somebody that has been holding ammunition for a while? How's he going to, are you going to have to, similar to the legislation where he wanted everybody to register certain weapons that they had, which I think ended up being that out of the, I don't remember the numbers, it was very large, out of it's 2.5 million registered gun owners in the state, only 2,000 people registered firearms that were designated had to be a special registration. And I know that's still up, you know, heading towards the Supreme Court, or if I think
Right.
it might even be with the Supreme Court. So how do they go back and back up the wagon to figure out where all the ammunition is and documenting all this? I think it's funny that that they attempt to do these things, and it's all part of a political ploy, as we know. I mean, JB wants to be the number one 2A guy, the number one 1A guy, the number one killing babies guy, the number one sanctuary state guy. He's going to be number one.
Number one tax guy. Don't forget that one.
Tax guy.
Yeah, he's definitely number one tax guy. And well, speaking of the, I saw it today. I don't remember her name. Who's the representative? Chun, something like that.
Sharon Chung.
Yeah. So
from the 91st state rep district. Yeah. Sharon Chung.
So
what did Sharon have to say?
So
she plays an instrument too. I think she plays the viola.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know her personally, but what I did see today is she's bragging about how she is going to take away the First Amendment rights of corporations because she doesn't think that they should have First Amendment rights because they're a corporation. I forget the name escapes me of the famous case where corporations were given the right of free speech so that they were able to contribute to campaigns and whatnot. So she views corporations, she's created legislation that will take away companies' abilities, First Amendment rights. Meanwhile, equally as offensive are the unions, and they're not a human being either, but they're continuing to have their rights. And that's even more outrageous because the unions collect dues. They don't collect dues. They force dues on their members, and the members don't get a choice as to where that speech goes to. And in fact, a lot of times it goes to speech that's the opposite of the position that they themselves would hold, and they want to give unions that free speech.
It's amazing. So Sharon Trung, and this is a good point, I think, that our audience and you are probably well aware of this, that the Constitution in of itself can always be, anyone can come up against the Constitution, like JB. He can just decide to be unconstitutional, and lo and behold, you have to fight him to get your constitutional rights back. Well, and that's, to me, where lawfare and how they've tied up the system, and what you started going down the road, I think, of what's happening currently in the Senate and in the House, and they're about ready to recess or go on vacation. I don't know if it's 2-week vacation, and yet there's so many.
They're not. Well, that's a good point, and is that they're not going to recess, and the reason they're not going to recess is because then Trump could appoint all these nominees that are languishing in the Senate.
Yeah.
So they're not doing that.
But they are scheduled. I think I misspoke.
They're not going to be there working. They're just not going to, quote unquote, be on recess.
No, they're just taking their holiday vacations in light of the fact that there's a lot of work to be done that is unresolved, and it would have been nice if they would have gotten the work done before their vacation. But I guess, if you pretend like you're just a corporate player and you just take your vacation when vacation's scheduled.
Yeah. I mean, that is part of the there's a lot of people talking about the lack of enthusiasm on the Republican side, and that type of behavior is one of the reasons for it. The weather is definitely picking up here at my house. I don't see it at your house,
no, I'm looking at up in the sky. I've been driving from the east towards the west, and I'm starting to hear some rumbling going on right now, and you can see some ominous clouds lingering behind me here down in Hayworth. So there's something in the air, and it definitely has cooled down a little bit. So I think that's always a good sign. And as you said, Chris, you might have had the day opened up in the 70s and got up in the 80s, and lo and behold, it could be 40 degrees here in the next.
In the next few days, I saw some of the lows being as low as 20 degrees. So it's not, like they say, weather in Illinois is if you don't like the weather now, just wait. It'll change.
Well, Mrs. Producer is informing me that if I come into where she's at, that my audio will go crazy. So I'm going to mute myself. Carry on. Great show, Chris. Continue to do a bang-up job. I know that I jumped in here and took away a bunch of your content, so I'm just going from here on out.
No, that's good. I want to give an update here about Illinois has spent a lot of money and effort and more taxes for you. They don't call them taxes; they call them battery fees, but it's all in this effort to eliminate some of the CO2 from the environment. And when you Zero Hedge, that's another really good website. If especially for finance, they have a lot of good stories about what's going on in the world of finance. So they have an article there today, and as Rush said, here I have in my formerly nicotine stained hands, which of course I never smoked. So, but what we have here is that they did some research in some of the ancient ice cores, and what they have come to the conclusion is that the levels of carbon dioxide remain stable as the world plunged into an ice age over 2.7 million years ago. So what that basically means is that CO2 doesn't relate to temperature. And so the whole idea of trying to eliminate the CO2 and reduce our CO2 is really just a useless operation that we probably should spend our money elsewhere and not be trying to redo our energy system for no apparent reason. That's another thing that JB is doing for us. So for those who know, when you put ethanol in gasoline, it's not particularly good for your engine. And Illinois right now is a 10% ethanol state. JB is trying to make it be a 15% ethanol state. So basically what that means is he's trying to get farmers to vote for him by upping the amount of corn that goes into your engine, but it's going to destroy your engine faster and not really provide you with any net benefit. In addition, when you look at what he's doing in terms of trying to move to wind farms and solar, all those things remove acres from the farmland. So here he is increasing the amount of corn that we need to go into our gasoline. At the same time, he's reducing the number of available acres to produce the corn that goes into the ethanol. And you say, Chris, how do you know that? Well, I know that because as I talked about last Thursday, is that he wants to get rid of all the natural gas and all the coal over the next few years. And that means that he has to double the amount of solar and wind to make up for that. And so that's hundreds of thousands of acres that are no longer going to be able to be used for corn or soybeans or whatever. And now is going to, just up the price of corn and make it more expensive for you to drive your car and all the things that get made with corn. So really, there he is again, just not caring about you, but making your life just a little bit more miserable. But it's one of those things that he's really slick at it because you don't know that it's happening. It just happens behind the scenes. You just see at the pump, the price goes up, or you see at the grocery store, your price goes up. It's all hidden behind all these different, prices. It's hid behind what you pay at the store. You don't realize how much of it is going back to the state for various reasons that you see. And in fact, one of the things is that the higher energy prices because of the war is actually going to increase taxes that you pay as well, because the sales tax on your gasoline is going to go up as well. And then on top it off is that they passed the gasoline tax that goes up every year at the rate of inflation. So the state's getting a raise on their taxes for gasoline. I think it's July 1st. And then on top of that, they're getting the extra sales revenue from taxing the I'm sorry, I'm just thinking about the next thing that you'll. So so basically more taxes, more regulation, fewer rights. Second Amendment right. Let's do whatever we can to make that as difficult as possible. Let's take away some First Amendment rights while we're at it. What else can we do? Well, one of the things that we can do is we can require cars to have monitors on them that measure how fast you're going at all times. So it's not enough to have these ridiculous cameras that give you tickets when you've never been there. Now we're going to get, you're going to get speeding tickets for, driving over the speed limit when you've never, driven, because the mechanism that is measuring your speed isn't properly set up right. So, there's another thing they're doing. So you saw your right to privacy. So they want a database on you about that. Now they want a database on how fast you're going. Then they want a database. I'm sorry, I saw a flash there. Meanwhile, what they're trying, you're on mute, David.
I think we're getting a little weather. I think that's interrupting our.
Oh,
signal.
okay. Yeah, I saw the spinning dial. So
Yeah, I showed up as Mrs. Producer here all of a sudden. I know I was on earlier.
Yeah, you're not as good looking. So
No,
sorry
I'm
about
not.
that.
No, I'm not. But boy, that Cub hat of mine is really short.
It is a nice hat. It is nice.
But getting back, that's interesting, and timing is everything. But here it is. Every item that they can measure, it does. I know I said it earlier about Nazi Germany, but that's really what they are. I commented earlier today on a social media post by J.B. Pritzker, where he's, saying this isn't a democracy, Trump's a tyrant. But just back during 2021, 2022, and part of 23, and I think it started in 2020, JB locked down the state of Illinois for 44 consecutive months. And this is where we saw plexiglass at grocery stores. We saw all the yellow little markers on the floor, and that we had to follow a diagram to go in and out of a store. And of course, the masking, that everybody had to wear a mask at all times, except when you were eating, or except when you're in a restaurant, or this is the same style, Soviet style, communist, Bolshevik, whatever form of government you want to call it. That's what this high-tech way of monitoring is. It's just literally.
Yeah, no, yeah, you're starting to break up. So
am I here? I'm going to let you go back on screen. If I need to, I'll come back.
But, well, I mean, you're good now, but just for a second. So I was going to kind of.
Well, like I said, I think it's the weather that's coming through. I'm looking at the radar right now.
Yeah.
Definitely are getting some thunderstorms, and boy, it's just going to hammer us all night in Illinois, especially the 2/3 of the state. In fact, we're going to have some stuff come through later on about 9 o'clock tonight that it's going to be pretty.
Well, the good news about that is they took away the drought warning for the city or county. I forget exactly what their terminology was, but at one point they were quite concerned because our water reservoir was down.
Rationing water.
Yeah. So that seems to be off the table. So, I mean, that's the good news about these storms is.
So everybody can start showering again.
We can all start showering again. Well, that's a whole nother one. Remember, the Illinois regulation on what kind of shower head you can have in your bathroom, they want to control that as well. So everything ends up back to
a whole new meaning to Big Brother's watching you.
Yeah,
J.B. Pritzker is in the shower with you.
Yeah.
Oh my God,
that's a disgusting thought. But that's, and then the flip side to that is he wants all your data, but he doesn't want to give away any of his data to the feds. He doesn't want to give over the voter rolls to anybody because he knows that they're a mess.
Corrupted.
He doesn't want to give away the SNAP rolls because he knows they're a mess. And
Medicaid, Medicare.
The commercial driver's license, he's willing to pay $128 million and then come back to us and say it's Trump's fault for not doing it. Meanwhile, and then they're back to and then another step in their chaos theory is to have this no kings
Rally this weekend.
This weekend there was no king. Trump got elected. It was too big to rig, and
Well, I thought that's what 1776, the Revolutionary War, was about, was no kings.
kings.
Didn't we already do this no kings thing?
Yeah, we did do this, and so that's a whole other thing. And then, the whole ISIS Nazis thing. It's just goes on and on and on. They never really, they never give up. I mean, like I say, you have to give them credit. They never give up. They constantly move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
It's always an all hands on deck. They work for years to put the pieces in place. So you can't get anything through the DC circuit courts because they're all rigged with Obama appointees and Biden appointees. So you can't get anything through there, and it all has to go to the Supreme Court. And, thank goodness that Trump had the opportunity to appoint the justices that he did. Otherwise, that would be another rubber stamp. So, and in fact, that they're so mad about that. The Democrats are so mad about that. They'll do anything to stop that. So what they want to do is, add some more justices to the Supreme Court and make them their justices. They're working on, if they get elected, they want to make Puerto Rico a state, DC a state, give themselves some more senators, some more representatives.
To stack the court, gets board 27 Supreme Court justices. Yeah, I mean, but there's no question they've mastered the ability of counterintuitiveness. They are always working on the other side of the script. I think one of the memes that is just classic is, and it was put up by our friend Tom DeVore. Go out, like, and subscribe to his stuff. He's got a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, I didn't know him before you mentioned that, and I've seen a lot of his stuff, and it's really good. It's and it goes, and a lot of this goes back to goes back to what Mrs. Producer was talking about, the committeemen and those kind of things. Is it's easy to sit here and say, oh well, the party hasn't done a good job, and so I'm mad at the party, so I'm not going to show up. That's not going to help. What's going to help is, if you don't like the party, take control of the party, and you can do that. I mean, that's what that process allows you to do, is that if enough people, and in some states,
well-meaning people,
yes, but in some states, the MAGA base has been able to take over their party and move it in the direction that's more meaningful for the base, and they're able to take it over. And that process needs to happen regardless of whether you're winning elections or not. And in fact, it should happen even more so if you're not winning elections. That's how the party's done a good job. They're winning elections.
That's right.
And what other way is there? Well, there's also fundraising as well. And apparently I think that was Tom made a point of that, is that other politicians in close races in other states are able to come to Illinois and raise tons of money because some of the donors feel like their money is wasted, so they'll spend their money on races in other states where they feel like they can make more impact. And so that's telltale sign that something's not right in the state part, or the Republican Party in the state. But
well, what I really liked the other day is Tom shared that meme of, basically
when Obama was in office, he deported something like 900,000 illegal immigrants. And he gave the person in charge of that, of his program, his border czar, a Medal of Honor, a distinguished Medal of Honor. I don't know the exact terminology because I got into a Facebook scuttle a little bit because somebody said he didn't get a Medal of Honor. I said, well, it doesn't say that in the meme. It says a Medal of Honor. It wasn't all capitalized, but that's what the leftists do. They like to argue semantics and everything else like that. But
that's Orwellian. I mean, obviously, that's the whole point of Orwellian speak is to call things that they're not, and then sneak them through.
Yeah, well, but the point being, what Tom was trying to say is, he gave this person, his border czar, a medal of distinguished.
Oh yeah.
And then under Trump, that border czar is called a Nazi, but they happen to be the same person.
Yep. Yeah. No,
so
that's
counterintuitive. It's like, you got to be kidding me. I mean, they don't think that video exists, that audio exists. I mean, they've constantly been recording on contradicting themselves. J.B. Pritzker, especially in light of everything on the illegal immigration and sanctuary state status, and having ICE here to protect and defend the people.
right. And then complain when the criminals are there and say that it's Trump's fault when they interfered with it. That's just hypocrisy beyond belief. Let me just
wrap your show up. I'm sorry.
1 minute here to talk about one. We kind of went down this path of talking about the Republican Party and a bit of a criticism of how that's, how we're reacting there. So the other thing that I've seen a lot of is there's a lot of people, and it really, the biggest example of that is Joe Kent and his resignation, and then blaming the president and claiming that the president is following the lead of Israel as opposed to his own ideas. And so that couldn't be any farther from the truth. And we see that because we have all kinds of historic documentation of Trump talking about doing the exact things that he's doing in the Middle East right now. So, let me share my screen here and just kind of go out on this this last video here where we can see so first of all, there's a newspaper here. There's a post of Trump talking about, here's his quote from the newspaper in 1988. "I'd be harsh on Iran. They've been beating us psychologically, making us look like a bunch of fools. One bullet shot at one of our men or ships, and I'd do a number on Karg Island. I'd go in and take it. Iran can't even beat Iraq." I don't know if you remember, there was a war between Iran and Iraq during the 80s. And that also closed they called it the tanker wars, because each side of that war had a part of the Hormuz Strait, and they were trying to keep the other side from getting money by blowing up their tankers. So, which I guess we were a lot tougher during those periods because the oil kept flowing through, and even though some of the tankers got hit, they kept pushing them through. Iran can't even beat Iraq, yet they pushed the United States around. It'd be good for the world to take them on. So, I mean, right there, we've got, clearly Trump talking about this long time before we ever had, before we even thought of this. And here's another one. This one's a 1980 interview. it's funny. He looks more like Barron in this interview because it's so old, but he talks about the same thing. So let me quick show that. And then
When you get the respect of the other countries, then the other countries tend to do a little bit as you do, and you can create the right attitudes. The Iranian situation is a case in point. That they hold our hostages is just absolutely and totally ridiculous. That this country sits back and allows a country such as Iran to hold our hostages, to my way of thinking, is a horror. And I don't think they'd do it with other countries. I honestly don't think they'd do it.
So what we see here is he's consistently had the same position throughout his, I won't say entire life, because I don't know, maybe as a teenager he didn't have that. But, you know, as a whole adult life, he's been on board, in public, on the record. What more do you need to know that he believes in what he's doing? And it's not Netanyahu who's telling him what to do and running the show in this situation. It's amazing. So, you know, a lot of these people need to, you know, get a clue. And, you know, one of the guys I like to listen to, Bannon, he's on board with that stupid trope. So is Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens. Of course, I don't even know why anybody would listen to her at this point. She's totally lost it. So I think what we need to do as a party, as I've talked about last week as well, and we talked about again this week, is we need to stop being sunshine patriots and get out and volunteer and get votes, get people, you know, talk to all your friends who have guns and get them to vote and get them to be registered, make sure that they're voting their best interest when it comes to their gun rights. Also, you know, get all those Republicans who are staying home because they don't think we can win, because we can win if we all get out and vote. So with that, I'll wrap up the show. Thank you for listening. I've enjoyed being running the show for the last couple of episodes. So thank you, David, for giving me this opportunity.